Well, hello, everybody. Today, I'm delighted that my guest is a real global privacy leader, Trevor Hughes. Trevor, would you like to introduce yourself and say what you do?
Well, of course. Thanks, Richard. It's delightful to chat with you. My name is Trevor Hughes. I am the president and CEO of the IAPP, the International Association of Privacy Professionals. We are a not-for-profit professional association that represents over 70,000 individuals who work in the field of privacy and data protection around the world. So we are not for profit, we are non-advocacy, so we're not a policy organization, and we do all the things that our members need: conferences, research, education, certification significantly. It's great to chat with you, Richard, who I have to mention is a former board member of the IAPP.
Well, thank you, Trevor. You've been around quite a long time. You've seen a bit about our Guernsey project Bijou, and it was all about sharing stories. And I wonder, could you draw upon your experience to share with us a story which really demonstrates, brings to life the importance of having a privacy or data protection regime?
Yeah, Richard, when you asked me about this and suggested this as a question, the first thing that came to mind was that, it's that old saying that the cobbler's family has the worst shoes, that I didn't feel like I really had a privacy or data protection story to share. But then I thought of something that really brought home for me just how powerful our field can be. 3 years ago, the IAPP had an author named Danny Shapiro on our keynote stage at one of our conferences. Danny had written a book called Inheritance, and it was about a true story of a discovery and exploration that she went through, all started by one of those at-home DNA family history genealogy tests. So she had been given one over the holidays. Her family is Jewish. She had taken the test, and lo and behold, it turned out that her father was not her biological father. And the story of Inheritance, which I just strongly recommend to everyone, Danny Shapiro, Inheritance, is this phenomenal story of privacy and discovery and secrets within families. So we had just had Danny Shapiro on our keynote stage. I had read her book and loved it. And we had also, my wife and I, given my father-in-law, who is a huge genealogy buff, he loves family history, one of these DNA tests as a Christmas present, as a holiday present. And soon after taking the test, he sent me a note, an email, and I was actually at another IAPP conference in Paris. And I opened the email and it said, "Trevor, I just got my results back from the DNA test, and it doesn't show my daughter, your wife, as my daughter. What's going on?" And of course, what immediately jumped into my mind was, oh my gosh, I'm having my own personal Inheritance Danny Shapiro moment where we're about to expose some deep family secret. It was actually much more related to our field. It turned out that he had not accepted or opted in to the sharing of information, nor had my wife for her DNA test. And once they both shared, well, then they were matched, and it was possible to see both of them. But that one moment where my heart was in my throat, and I was thinking, this can't happen to the CEO of the IAPP, that a DNA test is going to disclose a family secret like this, but it very much could. And it really brought home for me the power of the work that we do. Sometimes we get lost in the compliance and the technicalities of our field, and we lose sight of the fact that there are human truths, there are human stories, there are people's lives and secrets and intimacies that we are protecting, and that those are incredibly important.
That's a great example, Trevor. So it just demonstrates the points you're making. Let's look at a slightly wider picture, and I'm wondering whether you could think of an example where behavior has improved inside an organization because of deliberate choices made to change the culture of an organization. You haven't got to name anybody, but can you think of an organization or maybe a country or a region where the whole culture has really become aware and tried to aspire to greater standards?
So I'm gonna do a bit of a run around this question, I think, Richard. I don't have a specific example inside an organization, but I actually have, I think, evidence of the fact that many organizations are going through these changes right now. So it is a fact, that all around the world, the field of data protection and privacy is exploding. As I mentioned, the IAPP has 70,000 members. We are adding almost 1,000 members a month still. And this is now coming on 3 years after GDPR. Prior to GDPR, we were less than half of the size that we are today. So clearly GDPR has had an effect. But as those privacy professionals go into organizations, as organizations embrace the compliance obligations associated with GDPR, they do what they think they need to do in order to, I hate to say this, tick the box on compliance. I think there is a journey of discovery that many organizations are having. And so today, if you're watching television in the United States, you will find global multinationals that are advertising on American football matches, which is incredibly expensive advertising, with 30-second advertisements on privacy, on data protection and privacy. The culture of privacy has changed around the world, and we are at the IAPP evidence of that change. There are more investments, there are more companies, more people around the world. Let me add one more data point for you. 2 years ago, the IAPP under GDPR recognized that mandatory data protection officers actually had to be registered with their controlling authority, with their national authority. So we went to all of those authorities and we said, we don't need to know who they are, but tell us how many organizations have registered data protection officers in Europe. We were able to document in the 17 authorities that responded to us 400,000 registered DPOs in Europe. When we extrapolated to the remaining countries in the European Union, which at the time included the United Kingdom, we estimated that there was an additional 100,000. So a 500,000 strong force of data protection officers in Europe. So make no mistake, something is happening out there in the world. Whether it is driven by the pointy end of the spear, the threat of fines in GDPR, or an increasing recognition that the digital economy runs on trust, and that you do not have customers or stickiness or functionality or a business model if you do not have the trust of your customers. Whatever the reason, we are seeing a change in the effects, in the behaviors of organizations around the world.
I think you're making some really powerful points there, Trevor. I mean, going beyond tick boxing, our project Bijou is really sort of saying, well, yes, there's plenty of law, there's plenty of compliance, there's plenty of ticking of boxes in data protection. That is its reputation. But we want to get into the sort of the behavioral side, the cultural side, to spread the word much wider. And I think many financial service companies, for example, based in Guernsey, will take your words very seriously to heart. Yeah. Do you think there's a danger of it all becoming a bit too legalistic? I mean, wrapping two questions together, do you think that our project Bijou is on the right lines to try and get people to get it right, not because of the law, but because they need and want to get it right?
Yeah, I think it's both forward-looking and innovative, Richard, which is not a surprise with your leadership involved, but also incredibly important. We cannot lose the humanity in the work that we do. It turns out that privacy is a fundamental human truth. We care about our privacy in our homes, in our lives, in our relationships, in our communications, in our physical beings, in our information and data. We care about our data and our privacy in deeply intimate ways. And so it is absolutely imperative for all of the people working on these issues around the world that they not lose sight of the fact that a data subject access request actually relates to a data subject, which is to say a human being who is trying to understand what data do you have about me and how are you using it and how might that affect my life in the digital economy. That a privacy impact assessment, a data protection impact assessment, is about how the tools and technologies that we are building actually have consequences in people's day-to-day lives. This is incredibly important for us to remember. Our work is deeply human. And if we lose sight of that fact, I think we actually systematize it. We may lose sight of the fact that there is deep humanity in our work. Let me add just one last piece, and that is that I think we also need to recognize that privacy is a cultural normative value that emerges from the societies in which it grows. And so the way that I think of privacy as a Canadian, the way that you think of privacy, as a Brit, the way people around the world, in India and China and Australia, in the United States and Brazil, wherever it may be, South Africa, you name it, their construct and conception of privacy is deeply cultural, and it is normative based on the expectations of that culture. There is nothing wrong with that. In fact, there's everything right with that. And just as we appreciate differing cuisines around the world, we should appreciate differing understandings and expectations of privacy around the world. Now, I say that in full awareness of the fact that that makes the job of a privacy professional ridiculously complicated, if not impossible. But I am here to say that's really good work, and I think all of us should embrace it strongly.
Trevor, that was a great answer. I agree with absolutely everything you say, except the use of the phrase data subject, a very European phrase. I tried to ban it at the ICO because we did a survey and the vast majority of the British public thought a data subject was something you studied at school or university. And people are subjects. It's men, it's women, it's children, it's consumers, it's employees, it's not subjects. And so on that point, perhaps we may agree to disagree, but I think even you don't like that phrase. Trevor, there's some great answers you've given us. Thank you very much for joining us. I should have said you're joining us all the way from New Hampshire in the United States, but we really appreciate your contribution to our Bijou project. Thank you very much, Trevor Hughes.
Thank you, Richard. So great chatting.